Hello and welcome to the Pressing the Points podcast for Sunday, the 4th of December. I'm one of your hosts, Matthew Techhio, and I'm joined by...
This is your friend Dak, as per usual, also known as Danny. Again, good to be back. I've got a pretty good sort of following from the first time around, so I'll hand it over to young Jeffrey.
Yep. Cheers, everybody. Get the alcohol. 1, 2,
Cheers,
3.
my friend.
Jeffrey,
It's
80
Australia, for
K
God's sake.
kid.
Now we have to put the rated 18 thing on the YouTube channel. That's good.
now I can put Coke in it and destroy the lovely JD.
Mm.
You want to press that?
Right.
No.
All right, so a few things I guess that we've had in, like as we brought up in the first one, we've had the I believe the bounty for the 10-minute challenge has been completed. I had
the controversy at the end.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you guys about that because I only looked it up like this afternoon before we did the podcast, and I probably didn't really follow it as much as probably you guys because I didn't have a chance in hell of being able to compete. But I did have a look through, and they said it's finalised, and it's showing that the person who won is someone called Jesse Burgers, someone I've actually personally not heard of.
Yeah,
in the community. So
JP Burgess, Burgers,
I was at JP.
I don't know. JP.
I know who that is.
Great player. Eighth in the world last time I checked. Could be
right
seventh
behind
if I just get a little bit lazy, which I have. So
because it says that it's closed, but it also said that it was submitted on the 30th. So is it like with Twin Galaxies? Is it like is it people that work at Twin Galaxies that verify the videos, or is there certain people that sort of watch it and then?
Jeff can talk about this one.
Yeah, I did see in the comments a bit. He wasn't hard-assing around.
No. So there's a couple of things. Firstly, the bounty system at Twin Galaxies is in beta. So the whole idea of the initial bounties, they were throwing a bit of money down. There's quite a few bounties there at $250, and there's 3 tiers. I think the second one's like 125 and 100 or something, or 75. I don't know. But there's a few bounties, but it's all about running it through the system. That the actual bounty ended a day early in the system. So I think Jace Hall came back and said, hey, look, no, the bounty's actually going to end when it says it ends, which is the end of the month.
Yeah.
But if, in the system, it ended a day early. So I don't even know if you could have submitted another performance. So that's one side of things. They're just ironing out the kinks in the bounty system. I think the bounty system so far has been very successful in drawing people in and having them play competitive games for like Amazon cash prizes.
Yeah.
The other side to the 10-minute Donkey Kong bounty, highest point score in the 10 minutes there was no real rules set around, I guess, when you could submit your score. Or your performance. And so there was a lot of us just sharing performances as we went, sharing tactics, trying to, just push
each other out the community.
And it was a great little community thing. But of course, you always have those people with the slightly more aggressive, competitive styles. And, JP happened to come in there right at the 11th hour and throw down a score that he'd obviously had there, sitting for 10 days. So he'd done it for 10 days. So this obviously, put a few people out of...
fairness, I think it was 9.
9 days. Oh, sorry. He sat on it for 9 days and then sandbagged on the last, day. How he knew it was not going to end automatically, I don't know. He didn't. I think he just put it down the second last day.
He might not. He might have been sitting on another... He might have been sitting on a better score that if someone beat that he could have submitted. But look, I know there's a lot of ways people can feel about this kind of thing, I like the back and forth, seeing people pass each other and whatnot. But at the end of the day, a competition is a competition, and the person with the highest score deserves to win.
Absolutely.
I don't have a problem with someone sniping or sandbagging or whatever you want to call it at the end. It's not exactly fun, not in good spirits. But, I mean... It's a competition. At the end of the day, it's like you follow your favorite football team or something like that. I'm not touching on any of that, Dak. But you watch a footy game and one team is in front the whole way, and then in the last minute, someone kicks a lucky goal and the other team gets it. Just
And of course,
life.
in the back of my
It's a
mind,
bit different
I was
than that, like where it's like you're playing against each other though. Like with a game of footy, for example, like it's that game has to be very close the whole time. It has to be the last second. It's not like you can go from being 40 points down to winning the game.
Well, if
like
he
at the last
if he
minute.
kicked the ball 9 days prior and it just stayed in the air the entire time,
Just keeps on looping around.
yeah, it's going around Superman, like
Like boomerang, like
Yeah,
anyway, so there was conversation about trying to put in, like, the competitors were saying, hey, can we have like a 24-hour submission process where you have to submit your thing, even 48 hours, because, people are away for weekends or something, but some kind of time period that is within a day or so that the competition can be, I guess, more live, I guess would be the term. I don't think it's any fair. Like if he put that score up, the day he got it, I'm sure Ray Finkel would have been pushing a little bit harder. You know what I mean? To get to the next level, that kind of thing.
And these are probably things they didn't think about. Like you don't sort of think about these things transpiring, but
this is why it's in beta.
It seems like something they'll do again, but I think probably based on like that side of things, that it should be like has to be a live stream, not holding on to like a pre-recorded IMP file. That way, it keeps that sort of neck and neck side of things going.
Yeah, live streams aren't going to work. I know there's a lot of people that do not want to stream. They do not want their face on camera. They just want to submit an imp of their performance, that kind of thing, which is, I think that's absolutely fair. So there's another point you touched on is how does it get validated? So there's no more referees at TG. TG went, I don't know what year it was, but they went into the system called TG SAP, which I don't know what it means, but basically it's the community. Not only do they now create any game performance tracks, so Twin Gullies don't actually create, or not that I'm aware of, they may do, create new game tracks. Like if you want to, there's a brand new arcade game that came out and you want a point track for it for the highest points or the fastest time, the community actually create those tracks. They vote on the tracks and sponsor them with points. Then they become live and then people compete and they use their Twin Galaxy points to submit scores to that. Then that goes into the TGSAP process, where the community then reviews the performance, and there's certain criteria both holistically at TG and rule sets and stuff like no excessive leeching or that kind of thing. But there's also in a track itself, when someone creates the track, they may want to overwrite that this track is the leech track for Donkey Kong. You can leech as much as you want anywhere, even that infinite leech, and that's a specific track that people can then submit to. It mightn't be very competitive, people might not like it, but someone can create that and it gets sponsored and it goes to it. So when people submit to the bounties, it's usually exactly the same system as TGSAP. They literally put their vote on yes or no. So for a arcade performance, usually that requires a full performance of the gameplay on video or captured, plus look at PCB, so they see it's an original PCB, right numbers, the right dip switch settings on the PCB, and usually if it's Donkey Kong, it's like a 4-way joystick restrictor has to be shown. As long as you've got those things, that validates it on arcade. If it's a main performance, the main imp file that gets generated has to be created in Wolfmain, which is a kind of like a specific one for competitive sort of gaming, I guess. Records an IMP file, which is a playback file of the game performance. You have to zip it into a little zip, which keeps the imp in its state that it was, the time it was created, and then that gets uploaded. And there's also a validation process that's supposed to happen on main performances where someone goes in with a little command line and goes, they have some validation process where they run it through and it spits out all the sort of technical data that, yes, it wasn't modified, it wasn't, using save states, it was run at 100% speed, all that kind of stuff. And then
just to interject quickly here, Geoff, as well, for people that aren't aware of what we're talking about when we talk about MAME and we talk about IMP files. So you guys probably have a better explanation than I do, just because I know that some people that listen to this wouldn't be aware of what we're talking about. So when we talk about MAME, we're talking about like emulation on the computer compared to like playing on original hardware. Correct. But an IMP file is a specific type of emulator that tracks every single movement and that can play through like a program. So,
It's not
so you
emulated,
can
it's
see
just
that it wasn't cut and
Yeah.
pasted and like stopped and started and save stated.
So
essentially,
an input records, an input file, the name of it, an INP, basically records all inputs and the memory state, and then it encrypts that so that it cannot be modified. So when you go to play it back, the checksum needs to match what it should be. The initial seed is set to what it starts at the beginning of the video game, and then the inputs will match every single time. So they can
And
take that small
also
file and play it back.
the seeds as well is what people again might not understand. So with games that run on RNG, seed is essentially it picks a certain start point of the game, essentially, so how the initial
Random
RNG is
number.
going to
Yeah.
play out. So it doesn't. You can't sort of play the same sort of game twice, based on that sort of.
Well, the beautiful thing about that seed is once that seed is in the imp, it actually plays that game out. As long as all the inputs flow how you played it, it will play it one for one how that person played that file. So it'll be a perfect sort of replica of how someone played the game. So as long as that's matched with the right ROM set, it's validated. So sorry, I just want to interject one more thing. Sorry, just to close this off, then you can continue on. If at that, so I was talking about how the main validation process is supposed to work. If that gets through, people vote it and happens, someone can come along and then go, I dispute this now, press the dispute button, open dispute, because this was never main validated correctly, or it's got the wrong, settings on the main, dips, that kind of stuff. So people can then dispute a score and then get taken away again. So I don't know how that's going to work with the bounty if, for instance, if JP's score was, and I'm not saying it is, and it definitely isn't, but if it was dodgy and then someone disputed it after it's validated and it got thrown out, how are they going to take that Amazon voucher back? They're not. Yeah. They're probably
it still does say that it is in process. So just for anyone that knows, just a quick recap. So the 10-minute bounty challenge for Donkey Kong was essentially from the very first point that you have action of Jumpman or Mario. That was when the 10-minute point started, and then
it started at the first frame of the first girder on level 1.
It starts at the girder finger.
Yeah, it doesn't matter to the point, but it's 10 minutes from then. Yes, they picked that very point for a particular
girder finger was actually my nickname in high school.
Yeah.
Classic. So as it stands right now, so there was JP, they got 131,300. The verification which is still in process. Right behind him is our friend Barrow from New Zealand. We've got Matt here, who's got 127,900, but again, that verification method still says in process. So that just means not enough people have watched it and voted on it. And then, so that's your top 4. But I guess depending on what happens with the verification, that could potentially turn into the top 3. That could be slightly different. Yeah. Any final thoughts on that before we look at something in a different category?
No, we'll see what else comes. My final thought is they put out a bounty for $5,000 for someone to get 1.3 million on Donkey Kong, which in itself is absurd, but I don't think they understand that.
Give me a sec, boys.
Maybe if you want to offer, I don't know, 200,000 might be worthwhile for the amount of time you need to put in. Like, I would literally need to quit my job. 200,000 would not be enough. I'd have to spend 2 years doing nothing but playing.
Basically, it comes down to Twin Galaxies.
Perfect RNG the whole time, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Twin Galaxies don't understand the effort and the time it would take to get a player to the level where they can get 1.3 in. Like, Matt's not at that level yet. How long's he been doing it, and how good is he?
I will never be at that
level.
You know
what I mean? And Justin's the only one right now that's active, that's kind of pushing that boundary. But he just wants a world record. It doesn't matter if it's 1.3. So it's actually quite absurd, that bounty. But hey, it's there, and
it's there, and if Everest is there, people might climb it, and that's the point, right? Is to try and encourage people to play these games to new heights. I think we talked way too long about that.
We did.
And just to get some reference,
that's 10 minutes challenge over half an hour or something, right there.
And just so everyone's got a bit of clarity, so the current world record as it stands on DonkeyKongForum.net, I had DonkeyKongForum.com saved as my favourites, and you can still make an offer.
60 grand.
Is 1,272,700 held by John McCurdy, which is, again, that's pushing the game almost to its limit. So, 1.3 is a big ask.
And I have to say it's the world record is actually 100 points more than that.
Yeah, depending on who you ask. So, also, there's been, you guys were talking about as well, the Smash Brothers tournament has been shut down. I don't have a lot of insight to this, but I know you've got a bit of an idea about it yourself, Matt. So, what, in a nutshell, what has sort of transpired with that, and was it a specific version of the game?
No, it was whatever the most recent Smash Brothers is. My understanding is, because I know it's there was the Wii U version, then they put out the Switch version. They did a lot of DLC, extra characters. Not sure what that's about. But
that's Smash Bros. Ultimate.
Yeah. So, as you're probably aware, fighting game communities are rather small in general compared to some of the larger things. Like, they're not large like your PUBGs and whatever the heck people are playing nowadays. So they
Call
don't.
of Duty.
Yeah, Call of Duty, things like that. They don't see huge cash prizes. They don't see millions of players. But if you go back through history, Street Fighter tournaments, Evo happens once a year, every year in Las Vegas. I've always wanted to go. That's been going on for as long as I can remember. And these guys are passionate about their tournaments, right? So there was a Smash Brothers tournament set to go ahead. There was to be a decent prize pool from what I remember. I think it was, over 300 US dollars or something like that.
Yeah.
And
300,000.
Yeah. Sorry, did I say 300?
300,000.
If we play Donkey Kong in Australia, we get more than that. Jesus.
Yeah. So let me rephrase that. So 300,000 US dollars plus, from what I understand, because I haven't followed this closely, but it is worth mentioning. And what happened is this company called, Nintendo got it cancelled. My understanding is the reason it got cancelled is because they have an official partnership with a company called Panda.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I like the name. The name it's up there with Hamster. I'm very, very fond of Hamster Corporation.
Everyone likes pandas, don't they?
Well, yes.
Not anymore.
Yeah, no, not anymore. And so because there was an official partnership with like an esports company with Nintendo, they came along and said, well, you shouldn't do this because what's our partnership worth if people can just go off and host their own? And my understanding also is that for other esports, especially fighting games, like there's the Capcom Cup, right? So you play your Street Fighter or whatever. There's kind of rules around that too. So you can host your own tournaments, but they can't be for prizes greater than, say, $2,000 or something like that. Any tournament that has large payouts either needs to be part of the Capcom Cup, or I don't know, you have to talk to the company and negotiate something. So
there's a lot of if it's sort of capped at something like that, it's sort of, when you think about the logistics, especially like even if it's in America, like the travel, the accommodation, all that, like even if you're the winner, it's not going to it's going to become close to not even offsetting. So the risk versus rewards not even worth going to the event based on like your financial
small amount of money. Yeah. So if
there's actually an official statement now.
You can read that in just a second. But if you ask me, if I practiced something all year round and I was looking forward to an event and then it got cancelled, I would be upset, right? I don't know where you would lay that blame or vent your frustration. Would you vent it at the organisers for misleading you? Not that they probably intended to mislead you. They intended to pay you stuff. They probably came out of pocket because they'd probably organised, to pay for a place to host the event and all this kind of stuff, advertising, whatever. It's nobody wins in this situation, and it's
again
bad.
And that's if something like that were to happen, the competition obviously we really go to is like the Kong-Off. Like, to say that would be like, Nintendo said, you can't compete in Donkey Kong anymore. We wouldn't be like, we wouldn't be upset with like Netherworld and Jimmy. There wouldn't be even in like the thought process. So they'd probably feel the exact same, because the people that run those tournaments are probably, it's also that tight community where everyone knows everyone. That's, they, just because there's someone who runs the event doesn't mean that they don't have the same sort of relationship like we do with, like Jimmy, for example, where he's like someone you can talk to and message and, like that. They're probably not, in it for the money. They're in it for the passion.
Mm. And it might be different with something like an arcade machine, because those were sold for public play and public display. They weren't intended to be in people's houses. Whereas something like Smash Brothers, you boot it up, there is a legal agreement somewhere there that you can read that says, not for public performance.
Yeah.
So it just has bad optics on everyone, from the people who organised the original tournament to Panda to Nintendo. You'd probably just say, let's let it happen, because it's in the greater good of having these competitions. And the more people who play and the more people who go, the bigger the thing is.
So what was the disclaimer that they brought out?
Okay, so there's been a bit more. There's been a bit of, not backpedaling, but Panda's kind of defend, because it's being attacked quite severely, and they seem to indicate that Nintendo didn't really talk to them at all about what was going to happen. So the Smash World Championships was cancelled, and this is the one where they lost a lot of money. Nintendo's basically statement was, any partner that we grant a license to has to meet the high standards we require when it comes to the health and safety of our fans. So they were sort of like Nintendo's pinging them on their organizational abilities. Like, it's a bit of dragging it in the dirt, to be honest. And then Panda came back and basically said, look, we apologize. We were taken by surprise as much as the rest of the community that tournament was cancelled. The public, and that they had they don't agree with the sort of a statement around that it was being, I guess, can I say it? I don't know, run bad. I don't know what they're exactly saying, but they're kind of backpedaling and trying to cover their butts as well. I think in the end, Nintendo just made a decision, and it affected heaps of fans and people of Smash Brothers, and it's disappointing, to be honest.
And speaking of Nintendo, have you guys checked out the new Mario trailer that's been released?
Indeed, I have.
There's a Mario movie coming out?
Yeah.
Is it going to be as good as my Sonic one? I love Sonic. No, I'm just fucking with
more
you.
controversy.
The first Sonic movie.
The Sonic movie's alright.
I was in the second one, like not out of let's just say I haven't got around to watching it. But what are you guys' thoughts on the initial trailer? I know our boy makes an appearance.
Let's go me first. Sorry, Matt. I like to talk. You know that. Let's go me first, because I am not a huge Mario console fan, Nintendo fan. I go to Donkey Kong Machine because of Matt. I hate him because of it. But I just liked seeing Donkey Kong in there. I loved the character of Donkey Kong in that trailer. There was a lot of controversy over the voice being Chris Pratt of Mario not being like Mario enough or Italian enough. I don't know. And there's a whole conversation about cultural appropriation, all sorts of stuff. And to me, it was like, I don't care. Looks cool. I'm going to watch it. That's all I care.
I don't think Chris Pratt's out of a job, but it is a choice when you got a voice actor that's been doing it for over 20 years now. Because I think they use him for the voice samples on Mario 64, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't know, choice. It's about money. It's about what's going to bring in the broader public other than just the gamers, like Chris Pratt.
Yeah.
Does that really work, though, for animated movies? I've always wondered why animated movies have, celebrity voices.
Shrek, Mike Myers, it's like...
Oh, that works and makes sense, though, because
Donkey, Eddie Murphy.
They can sort of get into the character, and that sort of makes the movie. If it wasn't perhaps those personalities and what their experience put into them, I don't think it would be... For example, Shrek would be as big of a hit as it was if they didn't have those people that could really get into the character and do it. Whereas, I think Jack Black as Bowser, I think was a really good choice.
Yeah, really.
And he's someone who, again, he's an animated person. I think that's what Mike Myers and Eddie Murphy, they're animated people, so you can almost see them playing the character in the recording studio.
And you say Chris Pratt isn't?
What
comedian like Guardians of the Galaxy was hilarious. Like
I've
it
not,
comes down to
bruv,
it's
I
the
do not
gaming
watch
community that
superhero
don't like
movies,
him there. They want this other voice actor.
I
Who gives a shit?
I don't watch superhero movies, bruv. So I don't know who the fuck Chris Pratt is. Which character is he?
He's Star-Lord. Anyways.
I don't know what to say, Dak.
I watch
I'm
any
just
kind of movie. I will watch the
flabbergasted.
shittest movie that has ever been put out, and then I will actually go, yeah, that was all right. But
Actually, while we're on shitty movies, quickly, can you recap the when you went to see The Room? They had like that special setup and everything.
oh, The Room
Like,
is fantastic. Yeah, so the Nova Cinema in Carlton once a month plays The Room for a couple of days, I think. And when you go in, they give you spoons, so you can throw spoons at the screen every time there's a spoon on the screen. Or they give you a sheet of things to chant, like "because you're a woman" whenever a woman talks, because they'll say things like, and this is completely sexist, but it's because the movie is sexist, not because the audience or
yes, it
myself
is.
is sexist. The woman will go, "I don't know," and then you go, "Because you're a woman."
Got 'em.
Yeah, and there's a whole bunch of these things. And that movie is just, if you've never seen The Room is
No.
Jeff.
You have to watch it.
The Room is magnificent. You
I
cannot.
think we should
And
we should do
sexist,
it.
obviously.
I think maybe we should watch that between now and the next podcast,
Yes.
and then take down some notes, because I know that a lot of people, especially, know what we're talking about. But those who don't, maybe you do it with us and come back and see what you think.
And if you think it's too difficult, maybe go and watch The Disaster Artist instead, which is about The Room and has some fantastic recreations of scenes. But also Best Friends was one of their follow-up
cult
movies. You should definitely
100%.
see that if you haven't seen that, Dak. It will blow your mind. I saw that at the same cinema, and Greg Sestero was there for it, so that was wonderful. Going back to the movie, I really enjoyed it.
Bit of a silence.
I really enjoyed the trailer. So I was really pleased to see so many things touched on in what seems to be fine, tribute to what it is, and not just, hey, we put this in because,
Bit of fan service type
yeah,
thing.
yeah. And fan service is fine, but you just got to make the fan service have context.
Yeah.
I think Bowser being Jack Black is fantastic, and I think Donkey Kong is it Seth Rogen?
I think you might be correct. Yeah,
I think those
and
are good choices.
And in the trailer as well, like, it does start out with like Mario running across like
Some
the
girders.
girder,
Yeah.
like the opening scene, which is like, I think is kind of fitting if you're going to do because that was the literal introduction of Mario. Like, I didn't follow too much what the story's going to be. Like, obviously they get a bit of Mario Kart going, if I remember. Again, I only watched it once. And I wasn't like, oh, I need to watch this and remember to talk about it. But I'm definitely going to go see it. Like, let's be honest. So it's good enough for me.
I'm going to go see it too. I'll be in Japan when it comes out, so I'm hoping I can find somewhere that's playing it in English, because I'm like that.
Otherwise, you get to go to Super Mario World, which I'm sure you'll be going to.
I will definitely be going to, was it Super
Oh,
Nintendo
wow.
Land or whatever it's called? Super Nintendo World?
jealous.
I don't know. Definitely going there. I'll take some photos and we can put them on the podcast. And
Oh, mate.
yes, we'll have something to talk about. But yeah, I think, obviously Chris Pratt is a controversial choice. I don't know if I could have heard Charles Martinet going wahoo for 2 hours. I don't know. But hearing Chris Pratt go wahoo for 2 hours is probably also stressful.
There's all sorts of conversations. So one of the conversations was, well, he's a professional voice actor, so therefore he wouldn't just go wahoo for hours. He'd get into the character and he'd play the character. And so, let's face it, the decision is a purely commercial decision to try and put some big names in the movie.
Oh,
Simple.
yeah. I mean, that's why everyone in it is a legitimate actor. I'm not saying that Charles Martinet is not a legitimate actor, but these are A-list or B-list celebrities. There's no John Leguizamo here. There's no, even in the first movie, they got Bob Hoskins in because he was a big name after Roger Rabbit, right? So
killed it in that movie. It's great.
Captain Lou was fantastic in the Super.
That's another movie we should do a review of, I think.
I've
Original Super Mario movie.
Got it on videos on like DVD somewhere, so we should definitely. What about The Wizard? Have you ever seen The Wizard?
Oh, you're playing with power, mate.
Oh, I love the Power Glove.
It's so bad.
Yeah. Geoff, have you ever seen The Wizard? Maybe we could have a movie night for this podcast where we could live stream. Like, I'm sure nobody's going to sue us if we live stream The Wizard.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. That time frame, like the statute of limitations, the one thing.
I don't know about that.
There's not that time frame where it's like something.
I got the Blu-ray, so someone's still got the license.
Oh. Okay, maybe not. All right.
Anyways, yes.
Well, so since we did our last podcast, which is literally a fortnight ago exactly, have you guys been playing anything aside from Donkey Kong?
Yeah.
What have you been playing, Geoff?
I have been, and it's going to sound very, I don't know, obvious, but Ghosts and Goblins, I've actually been hitting it on this arcade machine I'm currently using as a table with the cloth over the top. But got it playing in the background, Ghosts and Goblins.
Yep.
I've been really trying to get I've been watching a few gameplay videos from some people that are amazing at the game.
Yep.
And what they do, and I've learnt that Makamuri, which is the Japanese version, is much, much easier. But using their tactics and the tactics that I saw on the US version, which is much harder, which is what we all play on. I haven't nailed it yet, but I'm trying to get through those two demons before the end of the first loop, the master, the Satan at the end of the first loop, and then I'll have another loop to do. It's just the rest of the game is just like it's almost patentable. It's pretty easy. It's just those last two. The other thing that I'm doing there is I've put an offer for a original Makamuri PCB that I hope to put in this cocktail that I talked about last week about the sort of grail items. And hopefully that'll come through because I can put US ROMs in it and have it as a G&G because it's exactly the same board, Makamuri to G&G. As far as I'm aware, they both got the big Capcom logo on the custom chips and stuff. But I've been playing, obviously Donkey Kong. I've been playing that. But as far as arcades or consoles have gone, not really. Have nothing super new. I'm a bit of a stalwart. Once I get on something, I just want to complete it. So
yeah, I've been. So I've had a game that I've been wanting to replay for a very long time, but it's again like I might not have said on the podcast, but a lot of my retro games and collection is still in my storage unit. But there's been you have those games that you start thinking about, but they're always in the back of your mind. It's like I want to replay that. So I've only just actually finished it this afternoon, but for the last sort of week and a half, I've been playing through the game called Manhunt on PlayStation 2, which I'm not sure if you guys have heard of or aware of. If not, I can give you a brief synopsis of it.
I do know it, but please, for our listeners. Okay.
So essentially it starts out as you're like a convicted felon that's been sent to death row to be executed. And when you're going to be strapped down into like the chair to get the lethal injection, the guards that are around you get taken out, and then you sort of wake up after being sort of knocked out from whatever drug they've given you. You sort of wake up and you've got this like monitor up in the corner, and then there's this guy talking to you, and he's like, put in your earpiece and you can hear me. And then he's like, this is your chance to sort of, I guess, have a second roll of the dice. So everyone thinks you're dead, but for you to have freedom, you need to do what I say. So essentially he's essentially wanting to make a snuff film out of you, and as long as you get to a certain point, then you'll get to live a free life, but you got to satisfy him the whole time.
Unlikely he'll ever let you go.
Are you sure this is a game and not like what happened to you last weekend?
Well. So
You did go off the charts, mate. We didn't see you for like
Yeah, you disappeared for like 3
5
days.
days.
You get
Yeah,
on a
it's long.
plane
Yeah.
and go to like, I don't know, some exotic location and murder some people and come back, or
Finish your manhunt story, and then we'll talk about
Yeah.
why you disappeared.
We won't. But anyway.
Now we really
Just-
need to dig the dirt on that.
Yeah. No, it's okay. So then, like for example, you start off and it sort of goes to the introduction, whatever. Then it's like you're sort of going through like a broken down sort of city in a way. But like the first thing you think you pick up is like a plastic bag, and you got to sneak up. It's sort of like a stealth game for the most part. So if you hide in the shadows, they can't see you, but you got like a radar. But like the first person you sneak up on, if they can't see you, you hold down like your attack button. Then it'll start with white, then it'll go to yellow, then it'll go to red, and the higher it goes up, the more brutal the execution is, which gives you more what they call fetish points.
I like the sound of this game at all.
No, it's very controversial, and it was banned not too long after it was brought out. It was made by Rockstar on the PS2. I remember my mate got a copy just as we were finding out that it was going to get pulled from the shelves, which it definitely did.
I've got a game like that too.
And yeah, so you sort of work your way through that, and you end up, coming to the corrupt police and XYZ. My missus wanted me to keep playing after last night because she was playing a game, and I was like, oh, I'm getting close to the end, but it's one of the games that actually gets me legitimately scared. And she was just over there like doing her own thing. I was like, oh, I've got to get through this level. And when you get to sort of the end, like the same guy's been directing you has turned his back on you. He's got all his minions out trying to kill you, but he also had this like pet project, which is like
can't trust
spoiler alert. Spoiler alert.
Actual dog. And it was like this. They call him Pigs. He's like this naked dude that's like half pig, half man, and he has like a chainsaw, and he's broken loose inside this guy who that you're working under, I guess at the start, like his big compound, like he's a big movie director, and at the end you're down this dingy basement and you got nothing, and this pig man type guy called Pigsy, like who usually the bad guys, you can see him on the radar, but you can't see it on this last level, and you sort of start walking around. Then the first thing he just comes out all guns blaring with a chainsaw, and I literally like screamed, and I was just like put on pause. I'm like, I'm not playing anymore, and it scared her more than it scared me.
You squealed like a little
shit. Mate, it was bad. But yeah, got through it today. But that's what I've been playing. Aside from that, yeah, another game I've started to revisit.
Sounds like a horrible game.
Well, it depends on what you like, which I shouldn't say like that. Killing people with plastic bags and executing them. But the other game I've been playing a bit and started to try to play through again even though I didn't finish it the first time, is a game called Cuphead, which if you haven't played it or heard of it, definitely worth looking at. Great animation, great side-scrolling, like probably the best side-scrolling game we've seen brought out, in my opinion, in the last 10, 15 years. But I've talked too much. So we'll move on to Matt.
But I haven't, we'll move on to Matt. I haven't played it, but I've watched streams of people playing it. It looks absolutely fantastic.
Mm. The animation in it is just
really classic.
Drew me in. Yeah. How about yourself, young Matthew?
I have not played a lot. You can probably tell because when that bounty thing was going on, I played for like 3 days or something, and only for a couple of hours. But I've played some of God of War on the PS5. I know it's a PS4, PS5 game. It's not bad.
My son's been, he's probably finished it now, but he's been playing that too.
Yeah, it's for a PS4 game, it's very much a looker. I don't know if it looks better on the PS5 or whatever, but you can see where the money has been spent. It is a good game. It's not blowing my mind. Like I wouldn't say, oh, it's game of the year or anything like that. It's a very good game. Like you can't go wrong by playing it. Sometimes I feel like it might be a little bit hand-holdy. So you got to solve a lot of puzzles. They're pretty easy puzzles, But as you're trying to solve them, the characters that are hanging out with you will be like, "Why don't you try and do this?" And you go, "I was just about no, shut up." And then you'll do
Yeah.
it, and they'll
Can
go,
you mute them?
"No," and then you'll do it, and they'll go, "Great job," and I'll be like, "Don't patronize me." You know?
Pandering again. We're getting pandering.
Yeah,
Dude,
maybe that's
it's
why the guy's angry all the time, right? Maybe it's because the dickheads he hangs out with all the time are giving him the shits.
That's why I hate games of today. I hate games of today, manual
No, it's not
The
that. It's not
hand
that at
holding
all.
is so hand holding.
I don't have a problem with a game giving you a hint if you've been stuck at it. Like, I really like if you're stuck at a certain section for a certain period of time, rather than getting frustrated, I want the game to give me a hint and go, "Hey, idiot, maybe you
Good
should look
game
over
design,
here."
right?
Yeah, and that takes a lot of effort. But here it feels like they just want every single person to get from start, from A to Z.
Yeah. And
And
not quit on it.
yeah, and I get that because you want as many people as you can to play the game, buy the next one, and whatnot. But it kind of felt like Spider-Man for the PS4 felt similar in that it was a great game and I enjoyed it a lot. But I don't often get all the achievements in a game. I think I got all the achievements in that game just by playing the game because it was just that easier pathway through.
That's one of the
yeah.
things like I always sort of, when I talk to my son about games and stuff like that, it's kind of the same thing like back in my day, like you had to, there wasn't, you can go online and look at a guide, you had to work it out yourself, but also that same sort of save state-ish style that it works on. I think, like, for example, like when Fallout 3 came out, that was one of my favorite games for a long time. But then, when they brought out the new Fallout game, like 5 years ago, or whatever, it seemed very much the same. And like, if you ever watched like, someone streaming it, as soon as there was something coming up where there's something could go wrong, they just go quick save.
Yeah.
And then it went to shit, and they just reload it. And then, like, to me, that takes away the whole flow of the game. But that's what people today are used to.
I like a quick save, but I don't like save scrubbing or whatever you want to call it, where you just do it over and over. That's shit.
Back in the days of Leisure Suit Larry on the Amiga in Sahara, I used that to get through Leisure Suit Larry because when you went to the casino, you could either lose all your money or win all your money. And so save state was essential. Just how you played that
Put it
game.
all on black. Classic.
Like it's like playing real-time strategy games, right? If you're saving and reloading constantly, where's the reward and risk? What is it worth? But anyways, that game's great. I bought another game called the Callisto Protocol. I haven't played it yet. I hear that if you bought it on the PC, it works really badly. But I got it on the Xbox. It's like Dead Space, if you've ever seen or played Dead Space. Really loved Dead Space. It reminded me a lot of Resident Evil 4. If you've played that, that game's fantastic.
Yeah.
But I plan to get around to that eventually.
All right. So, sort of, I guess, might be a good time to sort of go back to some of the things we were talking about in the first podcast. So, I'm happy to start if you want, but I'd say like my favorite console and how did I play it and how did I sort of come about it. So I've got a bit of a split sort of thing here. So favorite console, I have to say, growing up, as we sort of mentioned in the first podcast, I'd say is definitely probably the Sega Mega Drive. Again, I didn't sort of have an alternate option around from that. But when it comes to things that I have the most nostalgia for, I'd still say that would be the main one that I would go for, just based on just those memories that we all love nostalgia. Hence why we're here talking right now. But just like those memories of like playing through games with games with your cousins and doing the co-op games and just sort of going through that would 100% be the Sega Mega Drive. But as an adult, when I started getting into collecting, then the NES became my favorite console, even though I didn't really have any real connection or anyone that really had an NES growing up. Like, I had my best mate across the road, but again, very limited experience. But when I got back into collecting, that was the one thing that I really got into. And that was if I was collecting my games, that would be my main focus, to really expand my collection of how many games I can get. And it's just, I'd fell in love with the graphics, the control, like everything, the controller, the way it plays, the simplicity, the bad games, the good games. But as for like favorite games on, like, for example, Mega Drive, I'd have to say, like, surprise, like Aladdin. I have memories of renting that from the Maydena fish and chip shop and actually finishing that I believe I was like 7 years old when I finished that game. And when you go back and replay them, like a lot of these, I'm like, Jesus, like, how did I manage to do that when I was that young? Especially like, you know, having kids and stuff, you see them come up and like, you sort of think, well, you know, with the, you know, the hand-eye coordination that comes with it, that I was playing games that are this challenging that adults play now that can't get through, like even the first level. Like how else I managed to do that as a young child, which you know, because you didn't have a choice. It was like, this is what you got to play, and you're going to play it because Mum's paid $5 to have it overnight. And the other game, so yeah, Aladdin, Ghouls and Ghosts, Earthworm Jim would be my Sega Mega Drive games. They've all got a different sort of place in my heart. Aladdin being, you know, the fish and chip shop, Ghouls and Ghosts. My cousin and I think I owned a copy, and we would just take in turns of lives, and we'd work our way through until we finished it. Another game I think on that console that doesn't get enough love would have to be Earthworm Jim. Like, either love it or hate it, but there's something about that art style and the gameplay that I'll still go back and play through to this day. As for like NES, I'd have to say the standout favorite game out of all the games I've played would still have to be Mega Man 2. I think that's a flawless platformer in my opinion. But that's it for me.
Jeffrey?
Okay, so console gaming. I harp on about I'm an arcade kid and I didn't really play consoles, but I had a PS1, I had a PS2. I didn't have an NES or a Sega Mega Drive because it was all the computers. But I guess when I think back at the console games that I played more than other ones, a couple stand out. The first one was a game called The Getaway, and I don't know where the disc is anymore. I can't find it anywhere. But I had a game called The Getaway, and what I loved about that was on PS2. What I loved about that game is Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels had come out in like 1988. Do you remember that movie, Lock, Stock? It's like, if you ain't, you know,
And classic.
Freaking classic.
Freaking classic, just like
you know, it's basically London gangster scene. And The Getaway was kind of like Vice City. You could hijack cars and rip people out of cars, and you had quests or missions to go and, you know, raid this particular, you know, warehouse. And well, I think there's a huge shoot up at a cop shop, if I can remember rightly. But it was like the movie Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, but you played it. And so I think the difference was Lock, Stock was about 1998, and this is 2002. But absolutely love that game. It's embedded in my memory, probably is one of the only PS2 games I really, you know, played and loved to play. I did play, you know, God of War and stuff, but, you know, that one was more of a really a good game. Other ones,
great game.
I mean, I actually played a heap, but Prince of Persia on PS2 was amazing graphically wise. So was Jack and Daxter. I was an animator, and those things really caught my eye as amazing quality titles.
I remember Jack and Daxter being like the first PS3 game that I was just like, I can't stop playing this till I finished it.
Oh, even on PS2, it's just amazing animation. Naughty Dog are just amazing with their sort of set. I mean, you know, then they went on to do, you know, Uncharted and Last of Us. So amazing development studio, really, you know, groundbreaking kind of stuff. The other game, so Getaway on PS2, the other game, and you know, we're talking about later, we're not talking about back in the day because I didn't really play them. I was Amiga and stuff. Was on PS3 was Red Dead Redemption, the first one. So this game, I would play it on PS3, and my wife would sit there and watch me play and give me advice and hints. It was like for her, it was like watching an interactive movie.
Yeah, 100%.
Which was probably the closest gaming experience I've had with my wife ever, because we do separate things, and I'm a gamer and she's not. She used to play like Diablo, like she used to play some PS2 games that were more kind of like that fantasy sort of stuff. But playing that, the other thing that she played a lot was all the Mass Effect games. She's just collected all Mass Effects. She loved those games because of the storylines.
Going back to like Red Dead, I think the main reason that would be is the story. Like it's got such a great story line to it. Like, and that's what I think. Rockstar don't get as much praise for as maybe they do deserve. Like I know, Grand Theft Auto 5's got pretty long in the tooth, but for example, like the Manhunt game I was playing, that's Rockstar. Like, and the story behind it, as much as it sounds like a messed up game, which it is, the story is enough that, like, for example, my partner was wanting to see what's happening and see what happens going forward. And I think, like, when it comes to story writing, I think Rockstar really are underrated. And Red Dead Redemption 3, Red Dead Redemption on PS3, sorry, is what I meant to say. Again, great story writing, and like, I don't care how manly you are, when it gets spoiler, but the game's been out for 13 years.
We're spoiling all the old games today.
Like, when you get shot down at home, if you didn't get to the point where you wanted to almost cry as a man, like, there's something wrong with you, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't know if I was crying, but
I didn't say crying, but like, that was an emotional thing. And then you get the Red Dead Redemption by shooting that coward in the fucking creek. Fucking
yeah,
a dog.
Screw him, dog. But yeah, that was Sorry, they're my two kind of PS1. So they're PlayStation games for some reason, not really Xbox. But yeah, those are two games.
I played Red Dead on Xbox.
Did you?
Yeah,
I didn't play on Xbox.
Cringy. How about yourself, Matthew?
Well, before I say, I just want to give some feedback there, Dak. I agree that Mega Man 2 is probably one of the best games ever made. That game is just so tightly produced. The music is so good. The platforming is so good. It is like even the weapons and the bosses and that. It's just remarkable what they were able to do, and the fact that apparently they were told not to make it, and they made it behind their boss's back is fantastic.
I did not know that.
Yeah,
because Mega Man 1 doesn't really. I've got all 6 on NES. But like Mega Man 2, like I just always go back to it. Like none of the other ones, none of the other ones even felt the same. Like they try to,
he's not bad.
Same with all the franchises. They try to add too much to try and make it better, but they end up making it a detriment to the game, in my opinion.
My dog was named after Mega Man's dog, Rush. At when I had him. Yeah. And back to what Geoff was saying there. Yeah, Red Dead Redemption. Probably Rockstar's best storytelling,
100%.
But they make great games, obviously, and they sell gangbusters. You look at Grand Theft Auto, but the stories in Grand Theft Auto, you can see that they're good. Don't get me wrong, and the production values are
unrealistic.
great. But the homages to the gangster movies and all that they're trying to crib on, it's not as solid as their Western take. Their Western was just. And people don't make Westerns nowadays.
And you can't get the original Red Dead, at least my last time looking for it, as like a re-download or anything like that for the PS4 or PS5, because I kept on saying to my son, because he loves Red Dead 2. He loves it. Like that's the only game I've ever seen him continuously replay over and over again. And he's always like, if he sees a movie, he's like, I've seen it, Dad, I don't want to see it again. It's like, mate, I used to do that all the time. Yep. Whereas with Red Dead 2, he keeps playing and playing. I'm like, I really wanted him to be able to play the original Red Dead because I know he'd love it.
Yep.
But it's not as easily accessible
can I just say
those consoles.
Can I say it's exceedingly accessible in 4K on the Xbox? If you want to download it, it's about $5. And if you've got one of the more recent Xboxes, it's in 4K. So
The thing that in development wise, the thing about Red Dead that was groundbreaking too was the streaming environments. This wasn't really done. I can't remember a game before this, and maybe it was. I don't know, but the way that Matt, tell me. The way that they were streaming in these massive environments where you could go down to Mexico and come back up to
Oblivion,
stuff.
Skyrim.
I don't know. I didn't.
Yeah,
Skyrim was way
Ju-
after
Just
Red
Cause
Dead.
2.
Skyrim was
Just Cause
was
2
Skyrim
then.
before Red Dead.
Oblivion was definitely before Red Dead.
This is going to end up. I think next week it's going to be like the Red Dead Redemption podcast.
Yeah. Okay, sorry. But yeah, I just want to say I hate fanboyism of consoles. You know, if Nintendo, Sega, whatever, PlayStation, Xbox, whatever, play everything and enjoy everything, right? My favorite console, it's really hard to pick. Like, I loved the NES as a kid, and as an adult, the 360 was just a mind-blowing time for me. But the Super Nintendo is where it's at, and if I go back and I look at it, Street Fighter 2, when they did that on the Super Nintendo, oh, so good. Super Mario World, Donkey Kong Country, so many good RPGs on there. Final Fantasies, Chrono Trigger, Lufia 2. It's an unappreciated gem. I reckon everyone should play that game if they like RPGs. The superior version of Aladdin. He's out of here, ladies and gents. Dak has left the building. I did that just to spite him. I don't know whether or not it's the best version or not. I've played both, and they both seem shit to me. Both versions. But, Mass Effect on the 360, by the way, probably my favorite game of all time. Number 2 in particular is my favorite. Number 1 is fantastic.
Extremely scary as well, isn't it? If I'm not mistaken, the Mass Effect games, is that?
No, not scary at all. So
what's the outer space ones that are scary? What am I
Dead
thinking?
Dead Space 1, 2, and 3. Mass Effect is more of like the first one is kind of like James Bond in space. Choose your own adventure. The second one is kind of like a Seven Samurai, Dirty Dozen kind of game where you go out and you recruit the 7 most badass people in the galaxy to help you go and save the universe. And then the third one is it's the third one. So yeah, that's probably my favorite games because I put them together as a series. But the console, definitely the Super Nintendo. Definitely liked the Mega Drive at the time, but I just want to say another controversial thing, Dak. 99% of Mega Drive games sounds like someone's farting through a microphone. I can't handle it. Sonic sounds great. Streets of Rage is amazing. Everything else.
I need to bring these things up, but I'll loop back this a bit later. So because it's very valid points that you just made. So how about what would you say the best sort of shitty game that you've played? So when I look at a shitty game,
just kidding.
Oh, bro, you're killing me.
I love you, Dak.
Do you?
I do. Go ahead. No, really, keep going.
So, there's another category which comes into that, which I think is the best shitty game. So when I think of a shitty game, you can have something that's shitty, which is something that's unplayable, and your mates to play it, just out of sheer joy of seeing making them experience something that's crap. So for me, I'm going to sort of lean towards going with something that it is crap, but it's fun to watch your mates play, but it's not just because the controllers are no good and it's like Action 52 or whatever, which is just horrible to play and it's pretty short-lived enjoyment. One of my favorite games, I'd have to say that I personally enjoy, but also personally watching other people play, would have to be Where's Wally on NES. And if you see that on a CRT, I think that's even accentuates how ridiculously hard it is to even make out anything. Because they're trying to make all those Where's Wally, the panels, but have Where's Wally on there, and doesn't matter how big your CRT is, bro. If you're going to be fucking struggling to find the cunt, you know. So that's one that I think I'll have to put on, but that also works not as good, but it's still enjoyable putting on like a big screen LCD. Another game that sort of sucks and I still hate it, but there's something about it as an adult. I had to go back and finish it because I owned it as a child. It was a game called Green Dog on Mega Drive. Beach surfer dude. I don't even recommend anyone take the time to look it up. It's not worth it, but it's a crappy game that I had to go to my way to finish as an adult based on principle because I never finished it as a child, but do not recommend to anyone. Well, how about yourself, Jeffrey? What sort of crappy games do you get enjoyment out of or enjoy people playing apart from Donkey Kong?
Look, I'm trying to think. There's something that particularly comes to mind. Is a game called Puyan. No, I'm kidding. Matt loves Puyan. There's a game in one of the MGL tournaments that I had to play, which actually stopped me playing in the tournament because it was so horrible. And if Matt wants to go ahead, I'm going to try and find the name of that game and put a
It
video
wasn't
up for it.
Bagman, was it? Because Bagman is disgusting.
No.
Yeah, I'll give it a go. There's a game called Deadly Premonition, and it was for the PS3 and Xbox 360. And I actually bought I imported a US 360 when it came out because I'd seen videos of it online, and I was like, I need to experience this shittiness. Like, this shittiness is right up my alley. Like, it's so bad that it's good. It's like The Room of video games.
Yeah.
And it's a game that obviously it started as a PS2 game, and it just, I don't know, they sat in a room for years working on this PS2 game, and the rest of the universe went on, right? And then they released it on a modern console, and it plays poorly. It looks bad. Like, if you get into a car, the car is like a tank. It's not a tank, but it acts like a tank.
So it's like the Chinese democracy by Guns N' Roses.
No. But this game is fantastic, right? Despite everything that is shit about it, it is fantastic. Like, the guy talks to himself at all times to an invisible person in his head, right? Like a second personality. So he'll be driving his car and he'll be going, Zach, do you remember when we watched Superman 2? I really love Superman 2. I think Richard Donner is a great film. Which are your favorite Richard Donner films? And stuff like that. And you'll be like, dude, someone just got murdered 3 seconds ago. And then you'll be driving the car, and then the car will just spin out for a bit for no reason whatsoever. Every character in it is a fucking lunatic. It's like Twin Peaks. If I could find, and the enemies, none of it makes any sense, right? But it is this beautiful mess. It is on PC nowadays. The game map, like if you zoom the map out, the map is like a dog. I don't understand.
Question: Is it something you can get on your computer and stream at it by any chance?
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to stream it for you, Dak.
Okay.
The first scene.
Let's set a date.
The first scene, the dude is driving a car. He's smoking a cigarette while he's driving. He's working on his laptop at the same time, and he's on the phone. And then he has an accident. And you're like, well, of course you had an accident, you idiot. You were doing these multiple things.
Not just one thing that's wrong. You're doing 3 things that you shouldn't be doing.
Yeah. So
I get on the darts. No, let's set the darts out there, but that's more long-term health risk.
But the game's credit, it went to the trouble. It's such a poorly produced game, right? But it went to so much trouble that things like there's real-time beard growth in the game. Why? I don't know, but it's there.
That's impressive, though. Were they the first people to break into that sort of genre?
No, what, the shitty genre?
No, growing a beard on,
I don't think so. I think
the game goes on.
I just think the guy who did it had a dream, and maybe he couldn't achieve that dream, but he tried his best. And what came out, like The Room and like Tommy Wiseau, a masterpiece was born. And that game is the masterpiece. The other game that is broken, it runs at about 3 frames a second, that I really love, is called Drakengard 3. It's a PS3 game. It runs like garbage. It's this girl who can't die. She's got a flower growing out of her eye for some reason. Every time she tries and kills herself, she comes back to life. She has a team of people that follow her around that are all the most reprehensible human beings. Like there's one that's an old man who just wants to bang her at all times. There's
Sounds
one.
like name or missus.
There's one that likes to kill kids. There's all kinds of weird, horrible people.
My son
And
has his moments, but settle down.
yeah,
Man,
it's
this is two
Sounds
games you
relatable,
guys have
though.
talked about tonight. Two games you guys have talked about. First, there's like plastic bag killing game,
that's
and
Tasmanian.
now there's old.
That's just
people like
Woolies.
to bang.
Yeah.
Like,
If you don't want to
wanna
get
hear
if
about
you don't
those
want to get
games,
mugged
man. I
down
don't
at
wanna
your
hear about those
supermarket,
games.
like that's how you go in Tasmania. What are you talking
Go to
about?
Milwaukee Central, bruv.
I love this. We got one person on one side.
Headphones
Jeff's
are
like,
off.
I don't want to hear about these games. You got someone down on the bottom of my screen saying, "Kate, can we stream this game? This is really awesome." So I don't know.
Games need to be like fun, happy places or challenges. Like
No.
it's
I
this
disagree
weird.
completely.
No,
Games are
I get what you're
experiences
saying.
like
They need to
movies.
be everything. Yeah, they need to be everything. But I don't want to know about like murder games and what sounds like freaking snuff games, and I just
Yeah,
don't
that's
want
what
to
it
know
is,
about
yeah.
it.
All
I
right,
don't
we
want to know
need to
about
get Jeff off this podcast. We need to. No, I'm just kidding.
Well,
it's a snuff
we can always
cast.
before we transition to the next subject, Jeff, did you find the game that you wanted to?
It is. Yes, I did. I found it. It
What
was
is
it was an arcade game. Funny enough.
Yep.
It's called Venture. It was in the MGL, LX1V, whatever version. But this game, I'll read a quote from one of the submissions I put for this game. It says
I know this
shits.
game. I know this
It's
game.
called.
Oh.
I'll say this is what I put. I'll say this every new score. This game is a steaming pile of dog shit. Venture is this game where you have to try and go into certain rooms and dodge these bad guys while shooting arrows. The control system for it is the most frustrating pile of shit you have ever seen in your life. So this game should have 8-way controls, right? So you can just move around. No. Yep. It's got kind of 8-way, but it's like completely broken. It's the worst game ever. And thank you to Evan from the MGL who picks these games for picking that one game to make everybody's life hell.
But do you enjoy
Venture
watching
arcade
other
game.
people play it?
You know what? I enjoyed the challenge of trying to get further and beat other people. I don't
It
think
was
I
just a
won it
chance.
by any chance, but it's it was just horrible.
Well, let's go from like the shittiest games we've ever played to loop back to what we were talking about earlier. So when it comes to game soundtracks,
Matt said this earlier.
And I'll let someone else take the first round of this. So, for example, like for me, the best game soundtrack is not like I don't sort of go out of my way to listen to a game that, like I listen to the music the whole time, but there's certain things that stick with me, as in like I remember, like that's just a certain beat or melody that sticks with me. That's what I look at as the best game soundtrack, not like, oh, let's listen to each level and break it down, even though there might only be like 2 levels on these games that I like. They're the ones that when I hear that, it sort of triggers that for me. So we'll go counterclockwise if you like this time. So to me, which will be going with Matthew first. So what would you go with when you best game soundtracks that you can recall?
It's one of those things where there's a lot of soundtracks I actually like will listen to often, which makes me a huge nerd, right? Video game soundtracks, but I will listen to them. There's a lot of
Chicks love it.
Oh, the chicks love. Actually, my wife does, but and that's the only chick that matters. So
exactly. So
yeah, so that works out well. So like your Final Fantasy,
You're a very
your
smart
Chrono
man.
Triggers, etc. They're great soundtracks. Persona,
Yes.
all those kind of things. But for bang for buck, the greatest game for soundtracks is Street Fighter 2. I wish I had a better answer. But if you think about Guile's theme, Ken's theme, Ryu's theme, even some of the later Street Fighters, but Street Fighter 2, almost every song in there, I can close my mind. My mind. My mind is never open. I can close my eyes, and I can, I can hear it in my head. I can hear all those tunes. They're iconic to me, and that could just be the amount of time I played it.
Yeah,
But
it is.
It is? Okay.
Because I'm the same. It's about nostalgia. Like, game sound is about nostalgia, but there's also mine's going to be predictable, right? Because it's the Rygar high score theme is the most uplifting. No, seriously, it's the most. I'll play a bit right now.
I can't hear this audio. This is going badly.
Because I'm going to play it in the edit. But
there we go.
All right, no. Let's leave this to our viewers. I want you to edit in like 30 seconds of the Rygar song, which is quite good, don't get me wrong. And then I want you to edit in 30 seconds of Guile's theme. And I want the audience to tell us. We need to get a mailbag. This is what we're going to do for next podcast. We're going to have a mailbag. We're going to figure something out. Nobody's going to...
Funny's own video is fucking classic.
Yeah.
We're not going to do 30 seconds, but we'll do it at the end.
Yeah, do whatever.
Rose nest.
The Rygar high score theme is it's an uplifting, like, emotive, like it's just an epic. I use it as my subscriber.
No, it's
thing.
great.
It's just amazing.
I've never been to a concert where they've played the Rygar theme.
Dude, it's not about that. It's like you said. It's what hits you in the nostalgia, but also it's so unique. It's so. Yeah. Anyway, Dak, what's yours, mate?
So I sort of thought about this a little bit. So I'd have to say, in general, as like bangers, sort of, start to finish, Streets of Rage on Mega Drive. But I'd say like that is probably start to finish for me the best video game soundtrack. Again, I'm someone who pays close attention.
Any particular point?
The point where it starts or the point where it ends?
Yeah,
it's literally like is great.
It's kind of like the greatest hits from one band, like on one cartridge. As for like memorable sort of melodies, I have to say Zelda, Link to the Past, like
so good.
Just like the Fairy Fountain music. That's always been something that, no matter what version of the game it is, it's like whether it be that or Ocarina or Wind Waker or Twilight, they always redo it, and it's just that melody has always done something like musically for me. But when it comes to like, if we're going to just say like one level, one soundtrack, we're going to go back to Mega Man 2, and we're talking when we go into Dr. Wily's.
Wily, yeah. I was thinking about that before.
I didn't think of that before we did the podcast, and I was like, when it comes to a song that's just like bang, like I'm going to edit in the soundtrack as we're talking about the games here, so there's not like we don't have to wait for the soundtrack. So the most soundtrack ever, Mega Man 2. Bang.
Send in your votes via the mailbag. I don't know what the mailbag number
Process
is.
29.
Yeah. I don't know what it is yet, but
Mega Man and Castlevania both had fantastic soundtracks.
So vote
on. That you're 100% on.
Okay, listen, guys. So you got Mega Man, Wily, whatever.
Don't fucking
don't you talk shit about Mega Man.
What's yours, Matt? What's yours?
I'm not sure if it's my favourite, but we'll go with the Guile sound, the Guile theme from
the Guile soundtrack, Mega Man, Wily thing, and Rygar High Score Table. You've all heard them through the edit. Send us in what you vote is the best one, but more importantly, what you think is the best soundtrack.
Yes, we want to hear what you think. And it doesn't matter if it's old or new.
And we'll give them a listen. We'll give you our thoughts on that on the next podcast. So if there's a good game soundtrack that we haven't mentioned that you think's worthwhile, and if level specific, or probably go level specific because that's probably going to make more sense. Let us know. We'll
once again listen to the Rygar soundtrack now.
Like an angel.
It's like if a tree falls in the woods because they'll never hear it because no one's ever played fucking Rygar, bruv.
You mean Rastan? I know the music from Rastan. It's great.
I was trying to get Karnov and Mr. FPJ. Karnov's not on it. You know why it's not on it? Because it's a shit game. Nobody wants to fucking pay Karnov.
There is a Karn off every year.
Rustan's there. Rustan's there.
Where's the Rygar off?
Rustan's there.
Rygoff.
Yeah, you
Got
can
it.
Rygar
Let's move
right
on.
off.
Let's move
Well,
on.
let's move on. So another topic we sort of, I guess, touched on that we're going to discuss this time around as well was classic cartoons.
Mhm.
So I'll start with Geoff on this one actually. So what's a classic cartoon that you remember growing up that you still goes holds up to this day that you still love? And is there a certain, if it's a franchise, is there a certain section of that show that you like the most?
Okay, so obviously it's going to be, for me, it's Warner Brothers. Okay, Warner Brothers, Sunday morning cartoons. We got Lost to pick from. We got Sylvester and Tweety. We've got Porky Pig, Daffy Duck, Elmer Fudd, Longhorn, Foghorn, whatever his name is. I can't remember. Leghorn. I say it more. But the number one Sunday morning Warner Brothers cartoon for me is the Roadrunner and Coyote. Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner. Cheers to them, man. That show is just you know how much you want the Wile E. Coyote, you know how much you want him to win just once? Once? Everybody wants Wile E. to win just once, but he never does. That's the best cartoon ever. I'm sorry, Speedy Gonzalez, great, racist as shit, but Roadrunner, basically, and Wile. I like Wile E better than Roadrunner.
I'll have to agree with you. If you want to jump over this one, Matt, I'm just going to look something up from when I was a kid because I had a tape of Looney Tunes.
He-Man. He likes He-Man.
No. You know what I really liked as a kid is I really liked Astro Boy. And Astro Boy wasn't the kind of show that was always happy and stuff too. Sometimes it got pretty freaking dark and so Astro Boy. And then as I got a little bit older, there was Robotech, or the first part of Robotech, which was Macross, and I really enjoyed that. And to this day, those were probably my favorites.
That is your era. It's a good choice. Astro Boy, I agree with you. Other one.
So I didn't remember, like, I know obviously who Astro Boy is, but as for the cartoon itself, I never had like the tapes as a child. So I remember getting to see it on TV a couple of times. And I think it was like Astro Boy and Danger Mouse would come on.
Yeah, Danger Mouse,
and
Count Duckula, Banana Man.
But they were all cartoons that I was really interested in, but it wasn't like, what it is today where you can just go and look it up and watch it. It was like you had to catch it on TV and there wasn't like the tapes available to buy them on. But I probably wouldn't know I probably didn't know even what the show was called going back then to be the mum like, oh, I really like this show. Because it'd be like one of those things I remember Astro Boy, like I'd only seen like, and same with Danger Mouse, I'd probably see, I remember like 2 or 3 minutes must have been, and just been like, oh, that was cool, but I didn't catch on enough for it to be a thing. Because I'm pretty sure, if I recall correctly, when I was like, that Danger Mouse and Astro Boy used to be on quite late for my age. So like they were on after I was supposed to go to bed. So I didn't get much of a chance to see that. That's hence why I've only seen like a couple of minutes here and there.
Yep.
But they still.
That's interesting, Dak, because it was on
here
in the morning, very early in the morning, like 6 a.m. here on ABC.
Yeah. Well,
that's when you went to bed.
What's your show, Dak? What's your show?
Well, there was like and Matt might have even had the same thing. I tried to find it, and I think there's like even just like a live stream version of it. It's like a Looney Tunes.
Why am I into this so much? I want to know, but yeah, go.
It was like a compilation video, but it starts off with like Bugs Bunny narrating it, and like he goes through different like time periods and stuff like that. So like he talks about like he sort of narrates the whole entire tape. So when there's like Wile E. Coyote and that's on there. Sylvester and Tweety and Foghorn on there, but it's like it goes through like you know,
The demodulator.
Yeah, that's the one. And like that was one of the tapes I had as a kid, and that was heavy rotation. And I'm the exact same as you, Geoff. Like the Wile E. Coyote was always my favourite bit to look forward to, like every single time. Like because again, I suppose I wasn't young because they were released. I always think like, oh, they were released.
I love that you are like literally like 15 years my junior. 15 years. I was 15-year-old when you were born. Yet you love the same cartoon. This is Warner Brothers to a T. This is what I love so much about those cartoons.
And like it's like just there's certain classics. You know the tape I'm talking about. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, Matt, or not.
I don't know what it is, but I remember Bugs Bunny doing a sort of like a chronological thing through time.
I will find the cover of the tape and make sure I send it through to you so you can put up as a thumbnail, because I think a lot of us would have had this tape growing up.
Yeah.
But had like there was a few classic bits on there. There was, the Marvin the Martian, that was a pretty good one. But it's always just been like, that's where I
Lost in Time, Bugs Bunny.
Found a love for Wile E. Coyote because he ended up being my favourite, and still is to this day, my favourite Looney Tune ever. And you know what's also weird when you you'd think when you think the word Looney Tunes, you think like tunes would be like TOONS. You realise it's actually tunes in music.
Yeah. It's not Looney Tunes, it's Looney Tunes. Yeah.
Yeah, where you think cartoons.
Yeah.
I wonder where that came from. Anyway, I'm going to stop talking for now. Was there any sort of other?
We haven't heard from Matt yet. Oh no, did we?
Oh no, we did.
He certainly did, and you gave feedback on Astro Boy, but
oh, that's right. Yes, it's just that Warner Brothers just took over my mind.
That's okay. I'm okay as long as you're happy. I want to see you guys happy.
So it was like after that initial sort of childhood, experience with cartoons. Like, was there some other ones that you sort of gravitated to as like a slightly older child? Like for me, the four big ones that I can remember. The first one I'd probably say that I had my youngest memory of, and when we're talking about waking up early to watch a cartoon, like I remember getting really into Ren and Stimpy as a child. But
you idiot!
I remember that being one of those shows that was on. I think, if I'm not mistaken, like I'm talking, it was like on at 5 a.m. in the morning. So I used to try, and again, had no idea of what the times was and what channel to be on. But I remember, looking at the little time that, the little time that used to be on the VCR. That was like my little idea of what the time of the day was.
Ren and Stimpy, because parents aren't up enough to sort of, watch over what you're doing. And Ren and Stimpy, to be honest, your parents would not let you watch it. I'm sorry. If they knew what you're watching.
Oh, going back as an adult, rewatching it, yes, 100%. But there's that innocent, it's got that sort of adult humor, which it still carries over to this day. Like a lot of those kid shows have adult humor because I know the parents had to sit there and listen and watch that stuff. They've got to put something in there that the kids aren't going to pick up on, but mum and dad will. But I remember, trying to get myself to wake up so I could watch it. But then I probably didn't know how to work the TV as well. So I remember sitting there a couple of times and being like, why doesn't it come on? But I probably didn't know how to change the channel. So quite young. Another show was Captain Planet, which was kind of a big, for my age demographic. That was one of those cartoons. It was on ABC every night that everyone used to sort of also, watch. And I can't remember talking about it at school too much, but it used to be a part of that routine after school. Check on ABC. That was another show, same as Real Monsters a little bit later. That's sort of where my childhood cartoon.
See, I ran home to see Ren and Stimp, the Flintstones every day. After in primary school, and then
back in Geoff's day, it was actually still like Flintstone style, like running
yabba-dabba-doo.
on the bottom, on the bottom of the
I loved it. I literally used to run home every day after in primary school, like year 5 and 6 or whatever. But as an adult, definitely, because like my career, it drove my career. Animated cartoons and computer games came later, but animation and graphics on the computer, as I spoke about last episode, drove my career into animation and computer animation in particular because I couldn't draw. And as a young adult, Pixar animation just like Pixar is a household name now. Everybody knows Pixar movies, right? But back then, they did a little short called Luxo Junior, Knick Knack. There was all these little short animations that John Lasseter was doing as a very young man that were absolutely groundbreaking shorts for me and inspirational shorts. And then Pixar, obviously, Toy Story came out, and that was it. Their name was solidified in gold. That was the first ever fully featured 3D animated story. I've got the book of the Pixar story in that movie, and dude, I could talk about this stuff forever. I'm not going to, but as an adult, Pixar was just
one thing. Just before we do move on, but like when you bring up Pixar, do you realise that it was actually Steve Jobs that pretty much funded Pixar?
I know everything about it, dude.
So
everything, yeah.
No matter, love or hate Apple and love or hate what Steve Jobs was, like you got to think
he knew what he was doing, dude. He was smart
and
with those investments.
Imagine if Pixar didn't exist in our lives and our kids' lives.
Yeah,
like that's one thing that, like, regardless of what your opinion on the man is like that's one thing I've always been like, imagine if he didn't like put his own money into that because he loved the technology they had and wanted to see it come to fruition.
Literally, that whole industry was like Disney owned it. Disney, like Warner Brothers down here with their, Warner Brothers cartoon, but Disney owned animation. And then this new revolution came up that was Steve Jobs and Pixar and John Lasseter. And it literally, Disney dived and Pixar thrived. And that's why Disney as a behemoth just went, well, thank you very much, Pixar. And it's thrived ever since. The best move that Disney ever did. Now Disney have turned it around. Like what's the golden hair? Oh god, not Uncharted. They did a movie, like they did Tarzan, but then they did another movie. Sorry,
Tangled?
Enchanted. Tangled. Well done. That was brilliant. That was on par to the Pixar stuff. So Disney have come full round and doing their own, really high quality stuff. But Pixar really were the catalyst for the new generation of animated.
100%.
Yeah.
All right. So moving on before we go into our final category, again, something that we all know that I'm passionate about. Discontinued fast food items.
Who wants to go first?
I had one after last episode. I actually thought of an item, and you guys got to go because I got to rethink what that item is.
I'll go because I've got like a bit of a triple header here, and I'll give a short rundown on all three. First one being, I don't know if can you guys remember the KFC kebab?
Yep.
Thankfully not.
No.
What do you mean, thankfully, bro?
Because I'm about to be enlightened.
Oh, mate. Okay, so imagine KFC, like they had tabbouleh the whole lot. Like, when you go to like a kebab shop, they had tabbouleh, cheese, chicken, other stuff. I can't quite remember that. I remember, and it was toasted, full on kebab style. With KFC, that was pretty lit. That was circa 2008. Of course there was. Like it had everything that you wanted in a kebab, but it was just done by KFC. It was fantastic. And I haven't tried to look up discontinued KFC items. It doesn't even get mentioned. Like,
no, you know why? Because there's BZ and then there's AZ. Before Zinger and after Zinger, and everything before Zinger, people forget.
No, those zingers were still around, bro. Don't you worry about that. Another thing,
I've remembered my fast food item, but continue.
I'm just going to quickly, rip through these three. So the other one was puff pastry crust at Domino's. You guys ever had that?
Yeah, that was good.
That was some good shit.
It's a melt in the mouth,
I
golden,
wish-
flaky puff
Yeah,
pastry
no,
crust.
trust me.
Truly puff.
Fantastic.
This is puff.
This man knows what he's talking about.
I do.
Oh,
And-
I've got 2
and-
votes on the puff
Actually,
pastry, so it must have been good. I just never
Also,
tried it.
before you cowards even come back to the next podcast, you need to try the Zinger recipe. I'll send you a screenshot of what it is exactly.
Have you made yourself a Vegemite lettuce sandwich?
Unless you make it for me, it's not happening.
The Colonel makes it for you.
Because Matt actually went to KFC.
Yeah, and
KFC
did it.
yesterday.
Yeah, and yeah.
Like a coward, I didn't have what
I
you
will
said.
do it. But Dak, be sure
Trust
when
me
I
on it.
get to KFC, I need to actually text you, and you need to reply with what the recipe, because I won't remember it.
I'm
Yeah,
going to put a
can I
screen.
hold-
I'm going to send the screenshot, and I'm going to send it through so you can put it as a thumbnail. This is what everyone needs to.
I want you on the phone, and I want to put the phone up to the thing, and I want you to order it for me.
You do it through the app, bruv. Like, fuck, what sort of world we living in?
Okay, my turn. So McFeast.
I haven't finished
this
it. Just one last thing. Spicy jalapeno burger from, and I say jalapeno unironically. I call them jalapenos. The spicy jalapeno burger at McDonald's.
Jalapenos.
What do you mean? You mean
Yeah, I know.
jalapeno? Okay.
That's J, so
Yeah,
Where's
I
that
get that.
come
Like
from, bro?
yogging. Yeah.
But what that did, not necessarily the spicy jalapeno burger, did for that particular item, it was more that the fact that there was now jalapenos at McDonald's.
So you could use them in other things.
Yes, that's what that opened it up for.
Jalapeno McFlurry. I don't know what's going on here.
No, so I'd get okay. We can't redo it, but this is one thing that I did back in the day. So it'd be a double cheeseburger, take out the ketchup and mustard, add Big Mac sauce, add
How do you
jalapeno.
take out ketchup and
Why didn't you just get a Big Mac?
Because we're adding jalapenos, bruv.
And put the jalapenos in
I
the...
don't need an extra bun for that shit.
Throw the bun out.
That's what I'm doing with a double cheeseburger, man.
You're the weirdest shit.
And I don't want fucking lettuce either.
It's meant to
Like,
be fast food. You're the guy who drives through and puts their order in, and they're just like, "What part of fast food does he not understand?"
it's still
Now I'm gonna
fast.
go to my McFeast because I'm doing it for my wife. She brought this up. McFeast has been discontinued.
Yes.
That was her burger. That was the burger that she and Ryan Bowman reminded me of this. Crazy Fox, because he said the same thing. I was like, that's the one. That's the one I should have mentioned last podcast.
Is that
I
the
can't
one
remember.
beetroot?
I don't even know what's on a McFeast, but she loved him. That was her burger.
McFeast, it's your wife, mate. You're going to get called out now. You don't know what she
I
likes.
never ate it. By the way, we're gonna.
I think it has beetroot in it.
No.
I'm looking it up right
I
now.
thought it did too, but no.
I would have eaten it if it had beetroot in it.
So it was just, it's not too far off it's kind of like a double quarter pounder, but add lettuce and tomato.
Okay.
But it had like a special sauce in it though.
It was a
like chicken
feast.
sauce.
A feast
It was
for
a
everyone.
McFeast.
Yeah.
Special sauce. But my wife, she reminded me of that, and I was like, "Yep, that's the one." Now, we're going to go back to Matt, but I want to loop around to a very special glass item after this because you were supposed to look up something. Matt, continue. Fast food items. Anything else? I don't have anything else.
Look, I'm a man of science, but I'm willing to put my tinfoil hat on for something. And this is Coke Zero, the greatest drink that has ever been created. Coke Zero was delicious.
A wife thing?
It was
That's what she drank.
It was like you got the Coke, you got the Pepsi. We've improved
No
these
sugar.
formulas. Yeah, we've taken the sugar out, and it tastes better than both.
But
and
it's not no sugar. It's a different recipe.
That's right. It wasn't Diet Coke, but
It wasn't Coke no sugar. It was zero.
That's what I'm getting to, right? It was Coke Zero. It was the greatest drink known to man that was not alcoholic. And then, for some inexplicable reason, they replaced it with Coke no sugar. Something that tastes worse. Nobody asked for it. People wanted the old one back, but they said, no, you got to have Coke no sugar. So I'm just going to throw it out there.
Idiot.
What was going on? Was this some executive with a lot of power? Was this we found something in the Coke Zero that maybe we should stop selling to people?
But that-
Maybe they went back to the cocaine. I don't know.
because that's what, like, you look at like logic when it comes to a lot of things we love, and it's like the things that make sense. Like, and why don't you have this, and why don't you make this, and like, why the fuck they getting rid of? Like, again, I'm not going to start my Sprite tirade just yet. See, because I've never been a diet or no sugar kind of guy, and I remember when I tried Coke Zero, I was like, it still has that artificial sweetener taste to it. I don't like it. And they brought out the new version, and I was like, I could kind of drink that, but I still won't because you only live once.
It's not the real thing, as they say.
Yeah. So when did this actually happen? Because ignorantly, I think Coke Zero. I thought Coke Zero and no sugar were the same product.
No, that's what they want you to think.
Because I never got involved with them. So
my wife says no.
Yeah, and I say no. And Diet Coke is disgusting. Who the fuck drinks that shit? And if you're going to eliminate one, why wouldn't you eliminate Diet Coke? If it's the name that you don't like, that's fine. Just change the name to Diet Coke and put the good stuff in there.
And that's another thing I never quite understood. Like, what's the difference between, like, why would you keep having Diet Coke around when you've got Coke no sugar? Isn't that what the whole thing was supposed to be?
So what I reckon, Diet Coke marketed to women, Coke Zero marketed to men.
Although women drink Coke Zero more than
I know.
Hey, but I want to talk about a discontinued item redemption. Arnott's biscuits, barbecue shapes.
Oh, fuck that shit.
No, barbecue shapes.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Shapes. They changed the recipe.
Cheese and bacon.
They changed the recipe on a heap of barbecue of Arnott shapes products.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
The community just flipped the table, mate, and they reversed their decision, and then they created a original recipe and then the new recipe stuff, and people still accidentally bought the new recipe sometimes. Eventually, new recipe, see you later, original. That's what
you got to wonder why these things happen.
No, so I know exactly what you're talking about, Geoff, and my favourite shape, like always, was always the cheese and bacon original shapes, which were just cheese and bacon shapes anyway. And I remember when they brought it, the new recipe, they didn't give anyone a heads up. It was just like, this is what's happening.
You got no choice.
And then I remember this is like circa 2014, 2015. If I'm not, I think 2015 it must have been, or late 2014.
I can't believe it's not that, man.
But that cheese and bacon shapes have always been my staple favourite shape snack, and like something I always buy when I go to the supermarket. As a 16-year-old boy, I actually ate 5 packets in one sitting, just sitting there watching Law and Order Equivalent 10 because that's how lit I am.
You must have been so sick after that.
That's a kilo of cheese and bacon shapes, bro.
In your stomach,
Fantastic.
That's not good.
But I didn't feel bad. I was just like, God damn, this is a good shape. But I know exactly what you're talking about. And then I remember that it was just all of a sudden they were gone. So like chicken crimpies and stuff like that, which is one of the other greatest flavours with shapes, was still around. And pizza, I don't think got fucked with either. I think it was just, if I'm not corrected, it was barbecue, it was cheese and bacon, and it might have been pizza, was it?
I think pizza got fucked with too.
Yeah, I think pizza got fucked with. And I specifically remember like getting the new cheese and bacon shapes, taking home. I was like, oh, yeah, I'll give them a go. And Matt will understand when I talk about chicken feed in a second, but I'm guessing there's the same equivalent on the mainland.
The reject shop is the equivalent of chicken feed.
So you guys got reject shop over there. I didn't know that. That's essential. I'm going with. So I remember getting the shape out, and I was just like, yeah, I'm going to give it a go. I remember taking a bite and just being like, this tastes like reject shop or chicken feed, like that below market stuff. And just been like, what the fuck have they just done to my boy? And it was horrible.
Terrible. But they redeemed themselves.
They did by bringing back the originals, and there's no new ones still on the market, is there?
Nope. We like our stuff very particular taste and way.
Cowards.
In Australia.
All right, so now we've gone through a couple of the stacks that we used to know and love. One thing that we did bring up last week on the podcast that we're going to now bring to fruition, and this is a thing that I'm very interested in myself, and was a big driver for us actually getting together and actually getting to talk, because as you probably picked up, that Geoff has done a bit of game development, and he was very, I believe it was the Nickelodeon-based games were the main thing that with the studio you're working with, which is THQ Australia at the time, if I'm not mistaken.
THQ Studio Australia. Yeah.
So now going forward, and especially tonight, which I'm quite excited about, is that we got. Trust me, this is something that I wanted to hear about for ages, but you don't think anyone's interested. But trust me, people love this shit, and if it's good enough for me, it should be good enough for everyone.
Yeah, I mean, I actually probably have in my archive somewhere footage of the studio itself when it was first founded, and we started in Brisbane on Astor Terrace in a small studio. The first game we produced, in 2004, it was released. So we started in 2003. So this little studio, we a lot of studios they called satellite studios because THQ was a big publisher in America, and a lot of the little studios that were either founded or created were called satellite studios around the world. And at the time, if
I'm not mistaken, like THQ was sort of the one that did like the sort of franchise-based games. Like they didn't do a lot of original type games. Like they didn't produce original games. They did franchise games. Like they were like the LJN of the 2000s.
At the start, at the 2000s. So the God era PS2, like when you could produce anything on a PS2 and it would sell. It was like, early 2000s were like everything sold. But in this particular case, so the Australian dollar was like 50 cents to the American. So it made a lot of sense to start a game development studio in Australia. In fact, Pandemic Studios started a game development studio. We had our local one here in Brisbane called Chrome Studios. There was lots of Melbourne studios, Tantalus and whatnot. But THQ Studio Australia, we could have picked our own name, like, Ragtag Studios or something, but we went very specifically with this very corporate name so people would associate the studio with THQ. But the whole idea was to produce quality kids titles, because licensed titles very soon got a name as just churnware, shovelware. So we wanted to produce. They had the Nickelodeon licenses. So when you talk Nickelodeon, you talk about SpongeBob SquarePants, Jimmy Neutron, Avatar: Last Airbender, all those games.
And right? SpongeBob, for example, and Jimmy Neutron were money titles, like that. No matter what, is going to sell.
They're going to sell. They're popular titles. So 2002, I believe it was. So I just come back from London. So I went into I talked about animation earlier, and I went into this whole career in the animation path. But when I came back to Australia, it's going to be me-centric story. I'm sorry, guys. When I came back to Australia, it was the only animation jobs going were in games. Games were booming in Brisbane, in Australia in general, in 2000, 2002. They were booming. You couldn't really get, there was no film, and I was doing film and TV or TV is music videos. So I dropped a few names. Like in London, I was doing like Gorillaz music videos, Robbie Williams music videos, Coldplay music videos.
Wow.
Whole other story.
Jeff, we don't know.
See, this is the sort of stuff that I was intrigued about, because I knew there'd be a lot more stuff that goes like.
It's deep.
This is exactly why I wanted to hear these stories to start with. Wow.
Oh, we're going to start with the game, so we're going to actually skip over.
Robbie Williams is coming up on the next podcast, boys and girls.
All right, I'll go back to music promos and videos.
Games today. Yep.
I didn't even know he did those until right now.
Yeah. So let's jump over, the year, I guess, 2000 to 2002. I come back to Brisbane, Australia, and games is booming. I first got a job when I came back, I organised before I go with a place called Pandemic Studios, which produced, I think in Los Angeles, they did remember Batman Arkham Asylum? I think that was one of the end products before kind of whatever happened to them, but that was an amazing game. They'd really turned the tables in terms of licensed games. But before that, THQ, there was a guy, Steve Dauterman and Roy Tesla, who were both Americans that had come to Australia, and they had affiliations with EA, Electronic Arts, especially in Melbourne, with both of those guys. They both come to Brisbane. They want to start a studio, and I was actually employee hire number 2. The other employee was Dave McMinn, number 1, and they said, we got to produce Nickelodeon titles. Our goal for the studio is producing 1 title every year, which is a team of around about 30 people. And it's all Nickelodeon. I was like, I'm great. I'm an animator. I love to lead up the animation stuff. And I actually helped design the first game with David McMinn in my backyard, on my table in the summer heat, fan going. We had to do a Jimmy Neutron game, and so we just designed it ourselves, like 2 of us on that table, and that was Jimmy Neutron, Attack of the Twonkies. So it was a tie-in sort of tentpole game to a Attack of the Twonkies, special that was going on for Jimmy Neutron. And if you're a Jimmy Neutron fan, you probably know what I'm talking about. So we had to do the tie-in game, and there had already been another game created by Chrome Studios here in Brisbane. And I don't want to put disparage on it, but the quality of these games was up in the air.
Can I just interject real quick? Yeah. So you mentioned like you and your mate that were sort of involved in creating that game.
Yeah.
So how did the concept, for example, begin?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I know, Matt. I'm sorry, but this is the thing that I'm interested in. This is why I've been wanting to ask him about this stuff for so long. So you don't know about these games that you play. You just think, I just play it.
Okay, so Dave was
these are the sort of stuff that no one's ever heard of.
Yeah.
So these
Dave
stories.
Was a designer. He was heavily influenced by GameCube, and in particular Luigi's Mansion at the time. So Luigi's Mansion had this particular mechanic where you sort of draw the ghosts in or whatever with your little thing. So Jimmy Neutron is literally Luigi's Mansion in Jimmy Neutron, where he invented a device that you could sort of upgrade that sucked in these Twonkies and sort of kept them in, and there was a whole sort of push-pull mechanic, which is kind of cool. But based around this story of him bringing back these creatures from another Twonky, this other asteroid planet thing. So we kind of wrote out the storyline, and he knew what he wanted in terms of game mechanics. And we just, we wrote what's called a game design document at the time, and we took that to the studio, and then Steve Middleton came on, who was the art lead who'd worked in UK on all the really sort of some high quality, couldn't tell you what they were, but UK games. And we just formed a studio. We started hiring local people that were into creating 3D assets and programmers and all this kind of stuff. And
you sort of on the ground floor in a way.
Yeah.
When it comes to the whole studio down here, like we talk about, like you started bringing people in.
Yep.
So when you came to bringing people in, it was like, what was the process that went to that? Like, was it like because again, this is early 2000s, so it wasn't the same age that we're living in now. So it wasn't all digital. Everyone knows everyone and this, that, and the other. So how did you approach trying to find local talent?
It was the traditional sort of job advert, looking for people that were into 3D modeling and stuff. Yeah, in the paper, or I'm sure it's Samira, TSMURA. It's a site that still exists now. There was online and digital stuff happening, man, in 2002.
It was, but it wasn't the same as it is now.
Not quite, but there's still, that's
work wasn't the same as
people in the know were on these game sites. Samira, I think it was the name of the site with a T. So we put ads there, and we just get people that were, new, that were into, that a lot of people, juniors that I've worked with since, and I've hired these people many times through different jobs that were 3D artists and programmers and designers and stuff. And we just piled in the local talent, built the local talent, and created this game. And we did this one in 1 year. I don't know what the critical acclaim, Rotten Tomato kind of shit, this Metacritic kind of, probably not great.
The only way to learn what it's like is by playing it. And
exactly.
I'm going to try and get my PS2 emulator to work properly and I'll do a playthrough for you.
Yeah. So
Can you check up on the back art as well on post?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
that's one thing. That was our advertising back in the day. It wasn't magazines. It was
That's
like
right. You looked at the back of the back of the cover, but it's a tie-in, so it's already got a market.
Jeff, on Metacritic.
65, which
That's
is
not bad.
probably okay for a kid's game.
and so, for example,
it made money for THQ. So we produced
games.
games.
That's what I was about to ask. Sorry to sort of talk over you. That's exactly what I was about to ask. So the amount do you have a rough idea of how much it costs to produce the game in total, and then how much, like a movie costs this much?
Let's try and put the data on screen here. Let's look it up and see if we can put the data on screen now. But I know that because of the Australian dollar being 50 cents, it was so much cheaper, like half the cost to produce these games. So we were doing games at half the cost of development within a 12-month period, with double the quality in terms of what we were trying to produce. And Nickelodeon loved it. It sold well. We were a money-making thing. So eventually they tried to do 2 games per year. But this game was built. At the end of this game, there was a very tumultuous time for me. Matt probably knows about this. You probably know about this with my previous wife. But I left the studio for 10 months, and then I came back and worked on the end of the SpongeBob game. But that's a different story. I didn't really see a lot of the SpongeBob game.
I think in saying
SpongeBob's lights, pants.
I think in saying that the next episode we should talk about the SpongeBob game, because that's
I didn't have a lot to do with SpongeBob.
But still got to keep it linear to what
you're
going to, because I don't think you want to swap and change.
Yeah.
But just so everyone's clear as well, with the Jimmy Neutron game, like what was your actual role and what was your day-to-day when it came to making that?
So as I said before, I was an animator. I worked on music videos and whatnot. That was where my interest was. That's why Pixar is such a big influence on me. And I was a lead animator. So I was hired as the lead animator, second person hired in the studio behind the lead designer who worked at Chrome at the time. My intent was, for me personally, was to make the animation in game as close as possible to the series.
I'm going to make myself sound really ignorant.
Yeah.
Because I don't understand so much when it comes to when you say being an animator and being a lead animator.
Yeah.
What does that involve? Is that like trying to make the...
That's just going on. I've got nothing to do here. What's going on?
No, I can talk about Maya and things like that if you want.
Maya. What does that involve, though? Because this is something I find interesting. What does that involve? Like being a lead animator, is that like knowing what they send you, like the...
Yeah, it's keeping...
what the actual character looks like on the show, and then you make it work in a way that translates to the game.
Yes, so there's art. There's a combination of things. So there's art, obviously, and the lead artist takes care of making sure everything looks the same. Animation is making sure the characters kind of act and behave the same as the cartoon characters in the show, and make them believable. So I was looking at the quality of the animation. I was doing all the cinematics that you see. So a lot of the intro cutscenes needed to look like an episode of Jimmy Neutron. With Cindy and all the other characters. So I was in charge of a handful of animators to make sure that we hit the mark in terms of the license for the animation. Art, made sure art looked the same. Game design is a totally different thing. So one of the most interesting aspects of this was we went to LA for a recording session with the artists that do the voices for Jimmy Neutron, this sort of small lady that did lots of different voices. So we didn't run the session. We were there to make sure that we got everything that we needed for that session. They flew us to LA to do that, and I've spoken directly to Mark Hamill on a different game. That's another story.
So there we go. And if I'm not mistaken, you said you've actually got like some stuff saved on film, like of like those days and things along those lines. Am I not?
Yeah, I can flash a few things up, but
but for example, do you have you've got video, correct?
Yep.
okay, like I would speak for, I think, for everyone to say, like, we can make a Pressing the Points podcast extras channel where if you've got just footage that you want, that because I want to see it, and I'm sure that everyone that else that finds this interesting is going to want to see it as well, and you've got it sitting there stockpile. I think that is something that I'd really like to be, like to see, because I find this stuff fascinating myself. I know I'm fanboying to Geoff.
Yeah, we'll put a little appendix video.
Can you just edit that out? I don't want to be heard by saying I'm fanboying.
No, I heard it. I've got a local recording of that.
No.
Don't break any NDAs, Geoff.
Yeah, there's no THQ doesn't exist anymore, mate.
Yeah,
I don't know if there's actually,
but
there's
maybe
NDAs
some of
with
the
THQ
companies
Nordic,
to which you
Nickelodeon. No,
Marvel.
So we talk. Yeah, no. So that's a totally different story again. So we've got, what Dak is talking about, or Danny's talking about, is just studio footage of people working in a studio, creating a Jimmy Neutron game. So there's this, as far as I am aware, there's no IP with that, unless the people want
You
to.
could put that behind a paywall and OnlyFans and make Dak
Yeah,
pay for it, I reckon.
Maybe. But you look, just to summarize it, I don't want to go
squirt
forever.
lotion over here.
Please put your pants back on. I don't want to go, but I want to summarize and sort of finalize that game. So that game was built over a 12-month period. Lots of talented people in Brisbane that have gone on to good and great things, everywhere from Blizzard to God knows where they are right now. That was built over a 12-month period and released sort of in 2004 sometime. I can't quite remember. Moderate critical acclaim, not really that great. I mean, it's a kid's game, and there's not a lot of stories about it. We just put our heads down and got to work to get that delivered by the deadline, and we did it. And that was the first game of THQ Studio Australia.
I'm looking forward to 100% hearing again the flow-on effect and how it'll keep on the ball rolling. And
we grew.
Back to this day, like you're now, like you're starting to get back into that sort of thing. So it's been obviously a lifelong career that you've been able to make, and the curveballs I wasn't expecting with the Robbie Williams music videos, like being in London, like that's obviously going to be a story, for God's sake. Where's this been my whole life, like with Geoff?
I don't know, because my relationships to you guys is literally Donkey Kong, right? But my history is really with games and animation, and it all stems from arcades, really, and cartoons.
So going on from that, I'm also looking forward to seeing where this end of the sort of stream goes going forward, because that was quite interesting to me. I have to say, and there's a lot of things I want to deep dive in that, but I'm like, yeah, we can.
I think some games we could probably combine into one episode. We don't want to go on forever. But there's probably 1, 2, 3, 4, probably at 4, 5 or so episodes where I can say something about a new game topic, and then we can go back to
100%
animation.
So I would say at this point in time, we're sort of getting to the point of wrapping things up. So, yeah. Again, spoiler alert, that's a bit of a series that he might have worked on. But going into close, do you have any closing comments or questions that you want to bring up for example, this section with Geoff, going forward? Now he's sort of dropped a few bombs on us.
Hey?
Talking to Matt.
Your microphone, Matt.
You're on mute, bro.
That old chestnut. No, I really enjoy hearing these stories because I'm always intrigued as to what goes on in these studios. I've heard some good stories, especially about THQ in Melbourne in my time. So would be very interested to hear the other stories Geoff has to tell.
Yeah, they did The Blob, and that wasn't actually THQ. It was an independent studio that THQ bought. And they stayed very independent. Their culture was very independent. For the betterment.
I'd say, at this point, we've gone through a fair few, topics, etc. In general, like I'm very much myself looking forward to the next podcast. There's a lot of things that I just can't wait to do again. Like now, I think after doing this second one, I'm like, yeah, I can see where we're going. It's great, and we've got a good structure. Now we're going. So, for the listeners out there that actually go to the effort to listen to us talk shit for over 2 hours at this point, I'd have to imagine it is.
Thereabouts.
And a half, nearly.
Is there certain questions that you have for us? Is there certain things that are user specific, whether it be myself, Matt, or Geoff, or whether it be, oh, you guys should try this or try that? Like, we really want to actually hear, because if we don't hear from you guys, we don't really know what. Otherwise, it's just us just talking shit.
Yeah, positive, negative feedback, we don't care. Please send it through. If there's any points you want us to press, please let us know. What works, what doesn't.
And we haven't actually used that whole thing the whole time. We have pressed the points. We haven't actually pressed the points.
I did want to press the point about a lawnmower battery, but let's not do that.
There you
right
go.
now.
Oh, no, please tell us about the lawnmower and tell us about
Lawnmower
the battery.
battery.
The close of the show is Jeff's really obviously.
I'll try make it short.
Lawnmower battery.
So we bought. My wife said, "Hey, let's get an easy start lawnmower, instant start lawnmower, because then that way she can mow the lawn, because she could never pull that bloody lawnmower
She
and get
could
it
never
started."
convince you to do it.
Why is your wife on the lawn and not you?
She hasn't really done any of it, but anyway. So we got an
He
we
won't
got
listen to this.
we got an instant start lawnmower where you press a button and it starts, and it's got a battery that charges, that starts the mower. That battery died.
It's not one of those like.
No pull. Just press a button and it starts. It's still a 4-stroke mower. It's a powerful mower.
4-stroke was actually.
Briggs and Stratton, all that.
That could be the name of this podcast. 4-stroke.
They did an instant start battery, and this battery died. Couldn't get recharged. Went to Bunnings to buy a new battery. Lo and behold, you can't just buy new batteries. Like, this is an expensive lawnmower.
You got to buy a new lawnmower.
Yeah, no, well, we didn't. So we wanted this battery. So we found a place. We found a place online that had this battery. Looked them up online. That cost $190 fucking to replace a battery to start the. Well, it's annoying to start this mower.
How much was the mower?
PCB.
So like I don't know, Briggs and Stratton, whatever. Victor. It's a Victor.
Yeah, how much did the mower cost?
I can't remember it now. A couple $100.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was cheaper to get the battery.
Jeff's outgoings are all PCB related, not actual keeping the house.
Okay, I want to keep it short, guys. So the battery didn't work. We went to a place that said that they had it in stock in their online catalog. Fucking went through 6 months of we haven't got it, we're waiting on it, blah blah blah. We want our money back, no, and they just wouldn't give our money back, and eventually they thank God.
Imagine how large his grass was at the time.
Yeah,
like 6
exactly.
months.
Well, we had an old pool mower that would get out, and I'd do it with the old pool mower that ran at like 2 RPM because it was so old.
2 frames per second.
RPM.
Speed running that grass cutting.
So it's literally been like nearly a year-long ordeal trying to get a freaking battery because they don't sell them. So I'm going to call out Briggs and Stratton because that's the lawnmower engine that runs in these Victor lawnmowers, and they're Insta-Start engines. And I would recommend nobody ever buy an Insta-Start lawnmower, because you can't get the batteries, and if the batteries go, you can't start the mower. There's no way to jerry rig it. The batteries themselves, believe me, I open it up, that one's thrown out. They're not really just like replaceable batteries.
Because like I only know a lawnmower from like the.
It's where you press the button and it goes.
Now it's just press a button and it goes.
That's a coward's thing to do. That's not a lawnmower.
Well, a real man does a manual lawnmower, and you just push it.
Sorry, but it's a thing that when.
That's not.
Hey,
Matthew,
Dad, I'm gonna
please
call you out. when your wife wants to mow the lawn and says she wants a press start mower, an easy start mower, you buy one, okay? Shut
Sure,
the
it
fuck
wasn't
up.
some sort of thing
See,
she was saying. I want to mow the lawn. As
I don't
Sorry.
think she wanted my lawn. Like, that's a man's job at home.
No,
That's right, bruv.
please.
That's a.
Zach,
No, I'm with Dak.
It-
I'm all for equal opportunity, but doing the lawn is a
Lawns
man's
is a
job.
man's job.
Okay,
Yeah.
you guys need to shut the hell up and let me finish. So anyway, long colluded for it. Eventually, Bunnings obviously have the clout when they do their special orders. Had to pay it up front. Ended up being a little bit cheaper, $150, $60. But I got my and today, like fucking 8 months or so later, I finally mowed the lawn. There you go. That's my point. But the point I want to press is Briggs and Stratton, get your shit together. Make sure your suppliers have spare parts for these mowers if you're going to fucking sell them, because otherwise you are a big pain in the ass.
I thought Geoff was going to say, I got the part today and my wife was just having a fucking blast out the back.
Funny enough, that didn't happen.
Well,
On that note,
we haven't got to do much of an outro ready after that one.
please
But-
tune in for the next podcast where we discuss. I don't know, what are we discussing next? Household utensils. No, we're not really going to do that.
To finish on, what's a discontinued food item that you wish would come back? What is the best game soundtrack? Your favorite game on a console that you don't think is potentially up there with the ones that are rated? And a question for any of us, and if you want to go all three, what is something that you want to know from our history to now that we can talk about in this podcast? If you want in on that, type down below. That's the only place we're going to be able to see you on YouTube. Let us know, and we're going to say goodnight.